So I love the Beatles and I also love Oasis. If you're a long-time viewer of this channel, you'll be fully aware that I love both those artists. If you're not a long-time viewer to this channel and you're new around here, then please do consider subscribing. That'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. But it's also well documented that Oasis themselves are huge Beatles fans. To the point where over the years they have been accused basically of ripping the Beatles off all the time. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I think the Beatles' influences throughout Oasis' back catalogue is very, very clear. So I thought in this video today I would go over all those influences, all those references in Oasis songs to the Beatles and their body of work that I am aware of. I've maybe missed some, so if I have missed some, let me know in the comments down below. But let's not mess around here, let's just dive into this and go over all the Beatles references that I am aware of in Oasis songs, whether that be lyrics or melodies or, you know, the music, the artwork, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, let's just get going basically, let's not mess around here. So we'll start in the most logical place here with Definitely Maybe, the debut album, and surprisingly there's actually only 2 Beatles references on this entire album, and it's both in the same song, Supersonic. So firstly we have the lyric that references Yellow Submarine. Let's have a quick listen to that. In my yellow submarine, we all live in a yellow submarine. That one's blatantly obvious, but perhaps the less obvious one is the guitar solo of Supersonic. Sounds very, very familiar to the guitar riff of My Sweet Lord. I suppose as well there is also the cover of the Live Forever single, which is John Lennon's Childhood Home. If you want to include that one, then yeah, there's another one I suppose. And that is it for Definitely Maybe. I'm aware that there are people out there who will argue Up in the Sky sounds a bit like Paperback Writer and Rain, that era of the Beatles, but that's not really a fact, that's just someone's opinion. What we're doing this video more on is actual facts, where it is literally, it sounds like the Beatles, you can't deny it. That's up for interpretation, Up in the Sky. However, the Mono Valley mix, the original version of Up in the Sky, does sound very, very Beatles, I will give you that. But we're not quite finished with this era of Oasis yet, because we're going to go with a B-side, the B-side to Supersonic, and Take Me Away. It has a lyric in that song that references Octopus's Garden. It's not the first time we're going to mention Octopus's Garden in this video, but let's have a quick listen. I'd like to be under the sea. I'd like to be under the sea. Now What's the Story Morning Glory has a lot more Beatles references on this album, so let's just dive into it. We're starting off here with Roll With It, and it has a lyric that is taken directly from the song It's All Too Much. Have a listen. Now these next few are very obvious. Wonderwall is pretty well known where this comes from. George Harrison's debut solo album was called Wonderwall Music. Apparently Noel's seen that album on the shelf when he was writing this song, and he just seen the word Wonderwall obviously on that cover, and he thought, I'll have that. So that's where that came from. I have seen people online suggest that the lyric in Wonderwall, all the roads we have to walk are winding, is a reference to the long and winding road. I think that's maybe clutching at straws a little bit there, but I'll leave you to interpret that. But let's move on to Don't Look Back in Anger, because there's 3 here and they're all pretty obvious. So firstly, the opening riff, the opening piano is Imagine. There is no denying that. And then we have a lyric that me and you can't access, but it is actually taken directly from John Lennon. What happened was Noel got a hold of a tape, he bought a cassette, which John Lennon had owned, and he'd been recording like audio diaries, and he'd been talking about his bed-ins that he did in Amsterdam with Yoko in 1969. And he was talking about how he would start a revolution from his bed because everyone had said that the brains he had went to his head. And Noel really liked this phrase and put it in the song, so that's where that one came from. So I start a revolution from my bed, 'cause you said the brains I had went to my head. And then the single cover itself, I Don't Look Back in Anger, that one is drawn directly from the story of when Ringo quit the Beatles during the White Album sessions, and then when he rejoined the band, George Harrison decorated his drums and the studio with a load of flowers. There was never a picture of that, but this is Oasis' interpretation of what that probably looked like. It probably wasn't to this extremity, but yeah, that's what that is inspired by. Right, let's talk about She's Electric, because there is 3 Beatles songs referenced in here, all in the music and the melody, so it gets more and more obvious as we work through these. The first one here is perhaps less obvious. So let's talk about the intro of She's Electric and compare that to Good Day Sunshine. Now before I play you these, I should say with She's Electric in the intro, ignore the guitar, listen to all the instruments behind it and the build of it. It does sound very familiar to Good Day Sunshine. So next up we're going to go to the chorus of She's Electric. The melody of this is pretty much lifted directly from While My Guitar Gently Weeps and the chorus of that song. Even the way Liam is singing the chorus of She's Electric is identical to the vocal style George is using on While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Have a listen. And I want you to know I don't know why. And thirdly, we have the outro of She's Electric. This is very, very familiar to the outro of With a Little Help from My Friends. Play the tape. And finally, for Morning Glory, we come to the song itself, Morning Glory, and the following line. That there is directly referencing Tomorrow Never Knows, the closing track on Revolver from 1966. Pretty obvious, that one, to be fair. Right, we're going to do another B-side here, folks, the Masterplan, which has two Beatles songs referenced in it. Firstly, we have Let It Be in the chorus. Have a little listen. Please, brother, let it be. Let it be. And also at the very end of the Masterplan, you have Noel singing Octopus's Garden. Have a listen. I'd like to be under the sea in an octopus's garden in the shade. It's quite interesting that Octopus's Garden is here at the end of the Masterplan when obviously live they always sing it at the end of Whatever, but it's not on Whatever, the recording of it, interestingly. Right, we're done with the Morning Glory era, and now we're moving on to the Be Here Now era of Oasis, and we're starting with the opening track of that album, Do You Know What I Mean? And it's pretty obvious, this one, where it references both The Fool on the Hill and I Feel Fine in its lyrics. Put on the tracks and they must be mine. Fool on the hill and I feel fine. But the fool on the hill and I feel fine. Obviously this isn't Beatles related. Blood on the Tracks is a Bob Dylan album, and just as a side note, my next video will be a review of Blood on the Tracks, so keep an eye out for that. Next up's My Big Mouth. This one references The Long and Winding Road in its lyrics. Have a listen. And then we come to my least favourite song on Be Here Now, Fading Out, which references Helter Skelter. So the song Be Here Now itself has two Beatles references in it. Firstly, the title Be Here Now is a George Harrison song from his 1973 album Living in the Material World. It's a beautiful song, this. Much, much better than the Oasis song. They seem to like drawing heavily from George Harrison song titles.
It's been done.
But yeah, Be Here Now comes from a George Harrison song, and then the album Let It Be is referenced like so. And finally, for the Be Here Now era, we come to All Around the World, and this one's pretty obvious, I suppose. Hey Jude. And the music video for All Around the World also takes heavy inspiration from the animation in the Beatles' classic film Yellow Submarine. Now, a lot of people think the Beatles references only really happened in the 90s. When they got into the 2000s, it didn't happen. It did still happen, it didn't happen as frequently, and it was a lot more subtle. But it happens twice on Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. Firstly, on Go Let It Out, if you listen to the keyboard, admittedly the keyboard is buried quite deep in the mix, so you have to listen quite carefully. But the keyboard is on a flute setting that sounds very familiar to the flutes of Strawberry Fields Forever. Have a listen. Living is easy with eyes closed. Noel himself even said,
it's the first time we ever got close to sounding like a modern day Beatles, I think. Which is what we were striving for years and years and years.
I think there's probably other songs they've done that sound more Beatles-like than this one. It's literally just the keyboard that sounds a bit Beatley. But the other one on Shoulder of Giants is Roll It Over, the closing track. The guitar solo on that song sounds kind of familiar, to me at least, to the guitar solo of Come Together. Have a listen. We should have a little drinking game here. Every time I say the words have a listen, you should take a shot of something. It's up to you what you want to take. Anyway, Heath and Chemistry, there's not much on here. There's only the one song, Born on a Different Cloud. Liam wrote that song and he uses a lyric in it where he's sort of paraphrasing a lyric from Working Class Hero. Have a listen. Take a shot there too. That's your classless, clever and free. And you think you're so clever and classless and free. Right then, don't believe the truth. We start with the opening track, Turn Up the Sun, written by Andy Bell. The line "love one another," allegedly George Harrison's last words, according to his wife Olivia and his son Danny, his last words were "love one another." So that is what that draws inspiration from. Love one another. So next up we come to one of my favourite Oasis songs, "The Importance of Being Idle." And of all their Beatles references, this one is my favourite because this one is very, very subtle. It's done very, very cleverly, this one. Most people watching this, you're probably not even aware of this one. It's probably gone over your head all these years, but I'm going to point it out to you now. The Beatles song in question is "Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite," and the part of "The Importance of Being Idle" that we're going to take a little look at here is the keyboard just at the end of the guitar solo when we go back into the second chorus. Ding. Maybe everybody knows of this one and it's just me living under a rock and not being aware that everybody knows of it. But as far as I'm aware, I've never heard anyone talk about this one really. Anyway, let's move on to "Dig Out Your Soul." I'm going to look at the turning first and the guitar outro. It sounds very, very familiar to Dear Prudence. So post-90s, this next one is probably the most obvious Beatles reference. We're going to take a look at the Shock of the Lightning and its reference to Magical Mystery Tour. And finally we come to "I'm Out of Time." This one's pretty obvious. In the outro we have a spoken word part, which is John Lennon. It's when he's been interviewed on December 6th, 1980. I think it's like 2 days before he's killed. He's talking to Andy Peebles on Radio 1? I can't remember, I might be wrong on that. But basically he's defending his decision to leave England and move to America. It's buried deep in the mix. Noel himself has spoken about why it sounds so distorted. It should be been made clearer. But it's the first and only time the Beatles themselves actually technically feature, or one of the Beatles feature on an Oasis song. So yeah, have a listen.
So, as Churchill said, it's the Englishman's inalienable right to live where the hell he likes. So, and as I say to an Englishman, say, "Well, don't you get homesick and come back?" I said, "What do you think? It's going to vanish? It's not going to be there when I get back?"
And that's kind of it for the core catalogue, but there's one more song we're going to take a quick look at, and it's one that came out back in 2020. It was a demo that was released. Do you remember during COVID, in the first lockdown, when they put a demo out of "Don't Stop"? Noel has subsequently re-recorded this and finished it off on his album Council Skies, which technically means it's also a High Flying Birds song. And the High Flying Birds version still does this as well, but the Oasis version did it originally. "Dig a Pony," have a listen. And just like that, folks, that is all the Beatles references that I can think of in Oasis songs. If I have missed any, then please do let me know down in the comments below. I will kick myself if it's something blatantly obvious that I've missed. But I should say here before I finish that I don't personally think Oasis, and Noel in particular, are blatantly copying the Beatles here, are trying to commit fraud effectively by copying them. I think they're just wearing their influences on their sleeves, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's lots of other people done it. Obviously, what doesn't help with Oasis as well is the fact that they openly talked about their love for the Beatles. Their image was largely, especially the hair and stuff, was based off the Beatles. But you know, there's also lots of other things where Oasis, you could say, was much more blatantly obvious copying people. I mean, Cigarettes and Alcohol, the riff. Get It On, T-Rex. That one there is blatantly obvious. I was going to say surprised he wasn't sued for that, but then Mark Bolan nicked that bit of Little Queenie by Chuck Berry. He nicked that song off.
Meanwhile, I was thinking.
So, you know, it's just the way the music industry works. People take influence from other people, and I don't think there's anything that the Oasis has done here that is wrong. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this video up here. This did carry on into their solo careers. No, not so much, more so with Liam's stuff where he's referencing Beatles songs. If you'd like me to do a second video, a follow-up to this one on both their solo careers and the Beatles references in that, then do let me know in the comments down below. There's going to be a lot of people telling me things in the comments here, isn't there? Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I'm going to wrap the video up here. So if you have enjoyed this video, please do like the video. It would be greatly appreciated. If you are new around here, please do subscribe. It'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Anyway, I'm going to wrap the video up here. So like I said, next video will be a review of Blood on the Tracks, or it should be, unless I change my mind and do something else, which is also entirely possible. But the plan at the minute is Blood on the Tracks will be my next review. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you on a future video. But for now, goodbye.